Welcome to English with Zenko Master. Get ready to learn something new today.
My name is Elena. My life began with pain. I was born in a small coastal town in Maine. On the day I was born, my father did not smile. He did not hold me in his arms or kiss my forehead. He only stood in the corner of the hospital room with a face that was hard and cold. He wanted a son, but I was a daughter. I was 10 years old when I fully understood what that meant. By then, I already knew my father did not love me. He did not love my mother either. Many nights he shouted until his voice was rough, and sometimes he hit her. I would sit in my small bed, hiding under the blanket, waiting for the noise to stop. One morning, without warning, he left. He walked out of our small house and never came back. He left no note, no money, and no goodbye. From that day on, my mother, Mara, had to do everything alone. She worked in other people's kitchens, cleaned their floors, and washed their clothes. She took me with her because there was no one else to look after me. I learned to carry heavy buckets of water, sweep the dust from steps, and scrub stains from old rugs. Some kind people gave us food at the end of the day. Sometimes it was bread that was already hard, or vegetables that were almost rotten, but we ate it because there was nothing else. We lived in a small wooden house near the edge of town. The roof leaked when it rained, and cold wind came through the broken windows in winter. At night, my stomach made loud noises because I was hungry, but I stayed silent. I did not want to make my mother feel worse. Every month the landlord came to collect the rent. He knocked hard on the door and spoke with a loud voice. "Pay now or leave," he would say. My mother begged him for more time, promising to give him the money in a few days. He almost never agreed. I knew we were poor, and I knew life was not fair. But I also knew one thing was true. I loved my mother more than anything. One night, my life changed forever. My mother held my hand tightly as we walked through the dark streets. She looked at me with empty eyes. Her voice was quiet when she said, "Elena, your life will be better now." I did not understand what she meant. We stopped in front of a large stone house with tall windows. Inside, there was a rich-looking man sitting in a wide chair. His hair was gray, and his suit was dark and clean. He looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture. On the table beside him, there was an envelope. My mother took it. I saw the money inside. My heart began to beat fast. I understood. My mother had sold me. I grabbed her hand and begged her to take me home. My voice shook, but she pulled her hand away. I held on to her dress, but she pushed me hard. I fell to the floor. Then she slapped me across the face. My head spun and my cheek burned. She bent down and whispered into my ear, "If you follow me, I will hurt you." Her voice was filled with anger. Then she stood up, turned away, and walked out of the house without looking back. That night my childhood ended. The man's name was Mr. Harrington. He was wealthy, but he was also cruel. He shouted at his workers when they made mistakes. Sometimes he hit them. From the first day, he gave me orders. I had to clean his large black car every evening, polish the silver spoons in the dining room, and sweep the stairs until they shone. If I made even a small mistake, I went without dinner. I often cried in the small attic room where I slept. No one came to comfort me. I had no friends, no family, and no place to go. Once, late at night, I heard him telling his driver, "If this girl runs away, I will find her, and she will regret it." I believed every word. The years passed slowly. I worked from sunrise until late at night. When I was 14, I began to take care of more of the house because some of the older workers left. By the time I was 16, I was managing most of the daily cleaning, laundry, and kitchen work on my own. Mr. Harrington trusted me to keep things in order, but he never showed kindness. Then one cold afternoon in January, something changed. I was cleaning his study when I noticed his leather briefcase was open on the desk. Inside, I saw a thick gold watch and a large amount of cash. I closed the briefcase without touching anything. When I turned, I saw him standing in the doorway, watching me closely. "You saw what was inside?" he asked. His voice was low and calm. "Yes," I said. "You did not take anything." "No." He looked at me for a long time before speaking again. "Do you want to learn how to do business?" I nodded. I could not speak. From that day, he began to teach me. At first, it was simple. He showed me how to count the day's earnings and keep them in order. Then he explained how to speak with suppliers, how to choose the best prices, and how to record sales. Later, he took me with him to the markets and made me watch how he made deals. I worked hard and learned quickly. By the time I was 25, I was running 2 of his stores. At 30, he signed the papers that gave the business to me. He told me I had earned it. He had no children, and I had become the person he trusted most. Owning the business gave me power and freedom. I opened more stores, hired more workers, and made sure they were treated well. I paid fair wages and gave help to those who were struggling. I told myself I would never be like the people who had hurt me. Still, no matter how busy I became, I could not forget the day my mother let go of my hand. That moment lived inside me like a shadow. I did not know it then, but one day the past would walk back into my life. And when it did, I would have to decide whether to hold on to my pain or to let it go. It was a late autumn evening, and the streets of Marston were already dark. My car rolled slowly past the small shops that lined the main street. The air smelled of rain and wood smoke. I was on my way home after visiting one of our new stores. Business was good, and the company was growing faster than I had imagined. Yet, even on days like that, the thought of my mother sometimes returned without warning. I had not seen her since the night she left me in that stone house. At first, I hoped she would come back. Later, I told myself I would never forgive her. As the years passed, she became a ghost in my mind. I did not know where she lived, if she was alive, or if she thought about me at all. I stopped at a small bakery to pick up bread. When I came out, the street light outside flickered. That was when I noticed a woman sitting on the pavement near the corner. She was wrapped in an old coat, her hair tangled and gray. A paper cup sat in front of her. People walked past without stopping. Something in her thin, shaking hands made me slow my steps. I reached into my bag and pulled out a few bills. I placed them in the cup. She did not look up. Her head stayed bent as if she were afraid to see my face. I stood there for a moment, wondering if I should say something. But the air was cold, and I told myself she was just another stranger. I walked back to my car. The next evening, it happened again. I was driving through the same street when I saw her. This time she was trying to cross the road. The traffic was heavy. I pressed the brakes hard as she stumbled and fell in front of my car. My heart raced. I jumped out, and a few people gathered around. She was breathing, but her eyes were closed. I knelt beside her and touched her shoulder. "Are you hurt?" I asked. Slowly, her eyelids lifted. Her gaze met mine, and the world stopped. Her face was older, thinner, but I knew it. The curve of her cheek, the shape of her mouth. It was my mother. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a weak voice, she said, "Do you have a family?" I felt my chest tighten. "I had a mother," I whispered. "But she let me go." Her lips trembled. "I had a daughter, but I lost her." I looked at her with steady eyes. "You didn't lose her. You gave her away." Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. Her eyes filled with tears. She reached for my hand, her fingers cold and light. "Elena," she said softly, "it's you." I did not answer. I did not trust my voice. The people around us were still watching. I helped her to her feet and told her to sit on the curb while I called for help. She refused to go to the hospital. I offered to take her somewhere warm, but she shook her head. "I'm not welcome in most places," she said quietly. That night, I could not sleep. I sat by the window in my apartment, looking out at the city lights. My mind replayed the moment her eyes met mine. I had imagined what I would say to her if we met again. I thought I would be cold, that I would walk away without looking back. But when I saw her fall, my first thought had been to help her. The next morning, I drove back to the same street. She was not there. I asked a shopkeeper if he had seen her. He told me she sometimes went to a shelter a few streets away. I found the place, a small building with peeling paint and a sign that read "Community Kitchen." Inside, people sat at long tables eating soup. At the far end of the room, she was sitting alone, her hands wrapped around a cup. She looked smaller than I remembered from the night before. I walked over and stopped in front of her table. She looked up slowly. Her eyes widened. "You came," she said. I sat down across from her. "I need to understand," I said. "Why did you do it?" Her hands shook. I had no money. The landlord was going to throw us out. I thought if you went with Mr. Harrington, you would have food and a bed. I told myself it was for your future, but I know now it was wrong. I hated myself every day. I listened, but my heart was guarded. You could have kept me, I said. She nodded. Yes, and I will regret it until I die. For a while we sat in silence. The noise of the kitchen filled the space between us. At last I said, "Come with me." She blinked. What? I have a place for you. You don't have to live like this. Her lips parted in disbelief. You would do that after what I did? I nodded. I can't change the past, but I can change now. In the weeks that followed, she moved into a small apartment I arranged for her. I visited often, bringing food and clothes. At first, our conversations were short and careful. She told me about the years after she left me. She had tried to find work, but her health grew worse. She moved from one cheap room to another, sometimes staying with people who were not kind. She had been on the streets for the last 2 years. I learned things I had never known. She told me my father had written once, but she had burned the letter. She said she was too ashamed to tell him what she had done. One rainy afternoon, I was in my office when my assistant came in looking nervous. "There's a man here asking for you," she said. "He says he's your father." I froze. The air felt heavy. I told her to let him in. An old man stepped into the room. His hair was white, his shoulders bent. His eyes were wet with tears. He walked slowly until he stood in front of my desk. Then he dropped to his knees. "Elena," he said, his voice breaking. "Forgive me." I stared at him. Memories flooded back. His cold eyes, the way he walked out without a word, the years of silence. "You left us," I said. "You never came back." He nodded, tears running down his cheeks. "I was a fool. I thought leaving would make things easier. I was wrong. I have no one now. Please, let me see you before I die." I looked at him for a long time. Behind him, the door opened, and my mother stepped inside. She must have heard the voices. When she saw him, her hand flew to her mouth. She began to cry. Something shifted in me then. I realized I was the only one who could choose what happened next. I could send him away. I could tell them both to leave me forever. But I thought of the years I had spent building a life where no one felt unwanted. I thought of the workers I had helped, the families I had supported. And I thought of the little girl who once wished her parents would come back for her. I stood and went around the desk. I reached down and helped him to his feet. "Come inside," I said. My mother stared at me as if she could not believe what she was hearing. My father's shoulders shook as he whispered, "Thank you." From that day, things began to change. We started meeting once a week for dinner. At first, it was strange. even uncomfortable. Old wounds do not heal in a day. But slowly, we began to talk about the past without anger. We shared memories, some painful, some warm. We laughed for the first time in years. I knew we would never be the perfect family. Too much had happened, but we were together again, and that mattered more than I had expected. People say forgiveness is weakness. I have learned it is not. Forgiveness is not saying that the pain was small or that the wrong was right. It is choosing to live without carrying the weight of anger every day. It is setting yourself free. And in the end, that was my real success. Not the stores, not the money, not the respect of strangers. My true success was sitting at a table with both my parents, sharing a meal, and knowing that my love had outlived my pain. The first few months of seeing my parents again were not easy. We had dinners together once a week, but there were moments when silence filled the table. Sometimes, I would see my father's hands shake when he lifted his glass, and I wondered if it was because of age or guilt. My mother would often avoid my eyes when I asked about the past. It was strange to have them both sitting in front of me after so many years apart. Part of me wanted to forget everything and pretend we had always been a happy family. Another part of me could not stop remembering the night my mother walked away, or the mornings when I woke up to an empty house after my father left. One evening in winter, I invited them both to my home for dinner. It was a cold night, and the snow was falling outside. The fire was warm in the living room. I had cooked myself, something I rarely had time to do. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air. When they arrived, my mother gave me a small bag of apples. "From the market," she said with a shy smile. My father handed me a book. It was worn and old, with a faded cover. "It was mine when I was young," he explained. We ate slowly, talking about simple things, how cold the weather was, how the streets were quiet because of the snow. Then my father put down his fork and looked at me. "I know you have given us both more than we deserve," he said. "But I want you to know that I am proud of you." My mother nodded. "Me too," she added softly. I felt something inside me loosen. For so many years, I had wanted to hear those words, even if I told myself I didn't need them. I realized then that the little girl I had once been was still inside me, still waiting for her parents to see her. After dinner, we sat by the fire. My father began to tell me stories from his youth, how he worked on fishing boats as a teenager, how he once traveled to Canada for work. My mother spoke about her childhood in the countryside, about the gardens her family used to keep. I listened, surprised to find myself laughing at some of their memories. As the months passed, we found a rhythm. I visited my mother at her apartment twice a week, sometimes bringing her groceries, sometimes just having tea. My father joined us when he could. We still had our differences, and there were still shadows between us, but they no longer controlled every conversation. One afternoon, my mother asked if she could visit the first store I had ever opened. "I want to see where it all began for you," she said. I agreed, though I felt nervous about it. When we walked in, the staff greeted me warmly. My mother looked around at the shelves and displays with wide eyes. "You built all this," she said. "With your own hands." I shook my head. "Not alone. Many people helped me along the way." She touched a stack of folded clothes on a table. "I never gave you anything," she whispered, almost to herself. "But you built something beautiful." Her words stayed with me for days. Spring arrived, and with it came an idea. I decided to open a small training center for young people who had grown up without parents or in difficult homes. They could learn skills, cooking, sewing, bookkeeping, that would help them find work. It would be my way of giving others the chance I had almost lost. When I told my parents about it, my mother cried. "You are doing for them what I could not do for you," she said. The opening day of the center was bright and warm. We cut a ribbon at the entrance, and the first group of students came inside. My mother stood beside me, and my father was in the crowd. Reporters asked for photos, but for me, the most important moment was seeing my parents watching me with pride. One quiet evening, a year after I had found my mother on the street, I sat on my balcony and looked out at the lights of the city. My parents were not perfect. Our family would always have a broken part in its history, but I no longer felt the same heavy pain in my chest when I thought about them. I had learned that forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to let the past decide the future. It meant building something better from what was left. Sometimes, I still thought about the girl I had been in that attic room of Mr. Harrington's house, the one who cried into her pillow at night. I wished I could tell her that she would survive, that she would grow strong, that one day she would open the door to her past and not be afraid. Now, when I sit at a table with my parents, I see not only the people who hurt me, but also the people who came back. They came back late, but they came. That matters. Some people believe that success is measured by how much money you have or how big your company is. For me, true success is when you can look at the people who broke you and still choose to be kind. It is when you can say, "You cannot change what you did, but I will not let it destroy me." My story began with pain, but it did not end there. It ended with choice. My choice to love more than I hated, to build instead of destroy, and to give instead of take. I will never forget the night my mother let go of my hand. But I will also never forget the day I took her hand again. And that, more than anything else, is the ending I choose to keep.